Hello and welcome to my podcast called Innervation. Innervation was inspired by my previous podcast, Silence, where over the course of 2 years, I spoke every week with 100 women from science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM. I kept all of these guests anonymous so that they could talk openly and honestly about their lives. We discussed their experiences, what they've learned along their life journeys, and their hopes and ideas for living fulfilling and contented lives. Because the identities of my guests were always kept safe, the conversations on Silence were always so raw and transparent. And we didn't just talk about being women in STEM, but about everything. The topics that tended to come up were also those same topics that I discuss with my mentees, or that I'm asked about after I've given a talk in schools and colleges. Because their identities were always kept safe, the conversations on Silence were always so raw and transparent. We didn't just talk about being women in STEM, but about everything. The topics that tended to come up were the same topics that I discuss with my mentees or my friends, or I'm asked about after I've given a talk in schools and colleges. So I thought, rather than keep these topics just between small groups, how about recording a podcast about them and opening up these topics for everyone to reflect on? So what I've done is sift through all the episodes of Silence to bring you my favourite sound bites about these certain topics. Each week on Innovation, I'll be reflecting on the perspectives that came up from my Silence guests that I feel are actually pearls of wisdom that I found provoking, inspiring and empowering, in the hope that they resonate with you too. This week is all about asking for help. So why did I want to do an episode on asking for help? Well, I feel like often very capable women, particularly the women I've come across in STEM, are always so busy trying to do everything themselves and do everything really, really well that they almost see asking for help as a bit like being weak, or somehow they feel defeated if they ask for help. And I wanted to discuss this topic because I've often felt that way. I felt if I want to sort of ask for help, that somehow I failed in some way because I couldn't do it myself. And I want to talk about the benefits of asking for help, because in my experience now, when I do ask for help, I'm always so glad that I did, because often I can make something so much harder by trying to do something myself. And that sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but actually, I've spent a lot of my life living by the motto that if you want something done properly, you should do it yourself. And in doing that, I've tied myself up in knots because, not only do I want to do something myself because I want it done properly, but I want it to be done to really, really high standards. And being a perfectionist really doesn't help when it comes to asking for help, because, not only do you set yourself a really high standard, but, you end up putting so much pressure on yourself because you don't want to sort of slack on that high standard. And, you expect a lot from yourself, and it's just more enjoyable if you can share the burden. It's taken a lot for me to learn how to ask for help, accept help, be grateful for help, and all of that. And I still to this day have to work on it. It's just not an easy thing to do. My first quote is from episode 56, where she also talks about having to learn to ask for help.
I've had to learn how to ask for help because I think women are so capable and can take on so much and can cope with so much. Our instinct is to just try and do everything ourselves, but it's not possible. And so over time I've learned that, and I now have a great team around me. Within my business, I have a team of virtual assistants, and I'm in partnership with my sister. So we share the load and we delegate the jobs. And then, of course, with my family as well, the kids have to help out with doing the dishes and making dinner. And my husband as well, he's expected to be part of the team. It's not, it's not he goes out to work and I look after the home. We're a team and we do things together. So I think that's been a crucial learning for me. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. They see asking for help as a weakness or as a failure. They think that they should be able to manage the house, look after the children, have healthy dinners every night, and run businesses or have these ambitious careers. And it's too much to expect that you can do everything on your own.
I don't know why women really set themselves up for a harder time. I think maybe there's just so much expectation on women to do things well. It feels like sometimes there's either the expectation that they're just gonna not do something well. But if there is an expectation they're going to do something well, then the expectation is really super extraordinarily high. And I think what I'm trying to say is that, like, capable women often have even greater expectations on them, and that can be even more pressurizing and kind of, often capable women are few and far between, and so it can be difficult asking for help because you feel like other people can't do something better than you could. And so that can also be one of the reasons why we don't ask for help. But what I did find really refreshing from my guest from episode 56 is that, she kind of has relaxed her grip on what she expects from herself, in the sense that when you do start delegating and you do start giving tasks to other people, you do tend to relax more in that you have faith in their ability to do things. And I think that can mean that you enjoy life a bit more because you're not all sort of like highly strung and pent up that things will get done properly. I think the very nature of delegating tasks out already means that you've relaxed enough to actually delegate, which is a really important first step. I would say that, in my experience, not asking for help is down to not feeling like I could do the task well enough and therefore not trusting other people to do the task well enough. And there's just a total lack of trust and faith in the task being done, well or otherwise. And I think when you're able to ask for help, you do start to build up this faith in other people. And you can only really have faith in other people when you have faith in yourself. So I think sometimes not being able to ask for help is because we actually don't think we're capable. But the minute you become more confident in your ability to do things, you're able to be more confident in other people's ability to do things. It's kind of a weird thing that happens when you start believing in others, because it usually starts with having to believe in yourself first. Maybe it isn't belief in ourselves, maybe it's an acceptance in ourselves. My guest from episode 88 talks about being a bit more compassionate with herself. There are days when she doesn't want to do certain things, and that's okay. And I think that is also part of asking for help, accepting that everyone's human and that we're not machines. I think in my career, I've really had times where I've really felt like I'm a machine and that I have to do absolutely everything and all of that. And self-compassion, I think, goes a long, long way. This from episode 88.
Help. And I think because of that alone, I think we tend to less likely ask for help. And I think that's something that it's very sad, but at the same time, I think it's something that we should try to work past, that we have feelings too.
Definitely.
And there are days where I just don't want to get out of bed. I just want to stay in bed all day. And it's fine. It's fine to have bad days, because just like good days, bad days exist too. And I think that's something that we should recognize.
The number of days I've had where I've actually not had expectations of myself have been few and far between. Like, I've always really, really expected a lot from myself. And, you know, when my guest talks about sort of like there are some days where she just wants to stay in bed, I've never allowed myself to do that. I'm always someone that is hyper productive and hyper active. And I think it's because I haven't wanted to let myself be human. I've just wanted to be this never stopping machine. And I think it's because I really needed to prove to myself that I can keep going and that I never let up, because somehow letting up would feel like failing or being weak. And I've never wanted to allow myself to feel those things. But that's a really harsh way to treat oneself. And I think it's really important to give yourself days where you can just take a break, or you can just relax a bit, or you can just enjoy yourself a bit. I've never really allowed myself to do that. And you can get really, really burnt out. And so I think it's like having to recalibrate the way we see weakness and the way I see failure, because asking for help isn't weakness or failure. It's actually being really smart. And, you know, it is tied to how we judge ourselves and how we rate ourselves and what we think of ourselves. And I don't know, maybe I've always just been really, really harsh on myself and other people, which can be really intimidating, I can see now. But maybe sort of being really harsh with myself is because I've never actually really believed that I'm all that, and sort of being hyper productive and never ending in doing things is me trying to prove to myself that I'm worth something. And actually I'm getting to a point in life where I realise that hyperactivity doesn't actually prove anything other than the fact that I've got really low levels of confidence. I think confident people are able to ask for help. It's just like when they say that, you know, really strong people are able to cry. It's that kind of counterintuitive thing. And maybe asking for help is a sign of strength. I'm certainly willing to see asking for help as being a sign of strength, because I haven't always in the past. And yeah, it is a really empowered thing to do, to be able to ask for help and to actually know that you need help, and to go out and get it in the first place. This from episode 9.
And I do feel a little bit of a dread, almost thinking, oh, do I have to go into this? But then I just reach out to people and say, oh, I'm thinking it's this, can I have some support? And a lot of people, a lot of my friends have said they probably wouldn't reach out the same way. They tend to go in on themselves and not ask for help. And I think I've just been instinctively will shout out and say, no, I'm going to need some help here. So I think that's what's helped me build my confidence.
Maybe there's a bunch of guys listening to this podcast thinking, yeah, what is the big deal in asking for help? And maybe it is a female thing, but I've certainly really struggled to ask for help in the past. And I think it is really tied to levels of empowerment, because I think if you are able to ask for help, then there is a certain confidence in doing that. This from episode 12.
Because I myself, it took a long time for me to get to the point where I could ask for help beyond my comfort zone. It took me some time, and I believe it actually takes girls longer than it should compared to our male peers. And the one thing I'll say to that is, I remember one of my mentors actually telling me this, that young girls need to find that confidence from somewhere, whether it's a father or a brother or an uncle or a male, role model in your life to instill that confidence in you, because we do sell ourselves short compared to our male peers. And yes, that fear of rejection is...
So asking for help is empowering. Knowing that you need help and being able to ask for it is a really empowered thing to do. And certainly whenever I've asked for help, I've had to get really vulnerable to do so and say, I need help. And every time I've asked for help, I've always gone to people I can trust and people I know won't abuse my request. And I've never ever regretted it. I think it's really important to make sure we do choose the right people to help us, people who make us feel safe and secure and able to be vulnerable, and people that really believe in us and have got our back and know that if we're asking for help, it's because we feel that they are honourable enough to give us help. So choose wisely with who it is that you ask for help from. And I would say that you're in an empowered place if you are asking for help. That's certainly been my experience. Thanks for listening this week. Please do subscribe to this podcast and maybe even rate and review it if you can. I'd love to have your feedback on this episode or any others that you've listened to, and some suggestions for future topics for this show. It's all about self-discovery and evolution on Innervation, and I'm really trying to choose topics that are either difficult to talk about or could be the key to unlocking our fullest potential. Be kind and loving to yourselves, and I wish you all a great week.